Alright, all you moviegoers out there, welcome back to the Indy Radio Arcade. And it's hard to believe, folks, that this is the last Indy Radio Arcade we're gonna have a part of this week, year-ending edition of shows that we have. And I said to self, what would be the best way to end off this decade of shows, and what movie should we pick? Well, since we promised you earlier in the month that we were going to do something based off of an undead video game that will be featured during this show, we decided to keep the show for the end of the year to seem like one of those end-of-the-world apocalyptic type moments, and then it hit me. We should do a movie about zombies to go with the video game about zombies. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, for the 3MR to wrap up this decade, we decided to go with the movie none other than Dawn of the Dead. Now, originally we were gonna go with the classic 1970s movie that came out, but unfortunately we couldn't find it on VHS because we wanted to watch the classic version of it, and my mom told me, why in the world are you trying to find a movie in VHS in 2019? And I would respond back to say, I don't like the digitally remastered versions of certain movies, and Dawn of the Dead was one of them. So, with that being said, in the near future we will be reviewing that movie, but for now, we will review the remake of the classic George A. Romero film that took place in 2004 that was made by George A. Romero originally. So, with that all explained, the meat and potatoes of this said film is Anna, a local paramedic of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, would end up waking up one day after falling asleep with her husband, only to realize that the world went to hell in a handbasket, and would follow alongside of a police officer named Kenneth, along with a couple of other survivors, to take shelter in a mall in Wisconsin to try to fend off the living dead. Now, I know I have a thing about remakes, I really do, but this remake, ladies and gentlemen, definitely took the cake, especially how this movie started, and that was the one thing I loved about this film. Now, usually we don't reveal our favorite scenes of the movie without explaining too much of the movie itself besides the meat and potatoes, but hear me out, folks. The beginning of this movie, not only you have Anna trying to run away from zombies that can actually run and bolt at you, and I'm pretty sure this would be the second movie I would see that would feature running zombies that would terrify the living hell out of me outside of the movie of 28 Days Later. But then again, according to what the maestro said, those weren't zombies, those were people infected with a virus known as rage. So they're mutants. These are zombies, but the other things in 28 Days Later were mutants. There's a difference. And lo and behold, back to the opening scene, folks, because right after everything went to crap, next thing you know, while she was driving away, an ambulance would get T-boned by a car, go into a gas station, and blow up into like a neon star, or a neutron star, thank you Maestro for the correction, and it was outrageous. I mean, everything around them was going to absolute hell, and they were just all in the middle of it. And not to mention, another thing that I loved about this film, besides the crazy bedlam that took place not even 10 minutes into it all, had to have been the soundtrack that they had for this movie. Not only having The Man Comes Around by Johnny Cash to kick off the whole film, but you also had an acoustic version of the song, or not an acoustic, a jazz version of the song Down with the Sickness, and even featured the regular version of Down with the Sickness by the credits of this said film as well. And a little side note, I do believe that song would be the third metal song I would listen to in my entire life while I was growing up. That would be the third one. Because I think the first one was, Rammstein, Feuer Freu, and I do believe Slipknot, and then Disturbed. Because I don't count Prayer as a metal song, so yeah. Let's just say that was my introduction into rock and metal. But besides that background report, folks, another thing that I love so much about this film is the fact of the cast that they included in this said film. Because not only you had Ving Rhames featured in this film, who would go on to star in another undead film where he would get attacked by a saber-toothed tiger. Oh, according to the maestro, it was a cheetah. Why would he get attacked by a cheetah? But then again, it was a sci-fi original film. But to continue the cast, folks, you also had Tom Savini, or Savini, for those who don't know, excellent costume designer and a man who was featured as Sex Machine in the movie From Dusk Till Dawn. And not only that, but was also featured during the movie series of Machete. Also, you had Ken Foree, which, interesting fact about both of these gentlemen, they were in the original version of Dawn of the Dead. And Ken Foree, last time I remembered, was the main hero in the last version of Dawn of the Dead. So the fact that he was able to come back on screen as the actual person who was a part of a religious church, actually telling people why in the world went to hell in the first place, is pretty cool. Really is. And another guy you had involved in this said movie, which was absolutely amazing because I remembered him from this movie before he was in Modern Family, Ty Burrell. The man who actually played in Modern Family as one of the dads, he was a douche during this entire movie. My sister said comedy relief, but I really do think after a couple of the things he did in this film, really loved to hate how he acted during this said film. And one last person to mention besides the girl who was in a part of the Saw series was somebody who went by the name of Michael Farrer. And hopefully you said that name right, because he was a part of the movie 8 Mile, along with being a part of the doctor who was a part of the show of ER known as Dr. Greg. I knew I recognized him from somewhere, but I couldn't put my finger on it, and after reading his background history prior to this show, yeah, he was in ER. Never watched a single episode of it either. And one of my favorite scenes of this entire film has to be once they made their way onto the roof and met a shooter that went by the name of Andy, which during their spare time of just living in this mall would just see this guy on the roof and ask him to shoot celebrity lookalikes in the head. I know it's a sick thing to say, but still at the same time, with the accuracy that this guy had and the discomfort that the girl Anna had during that part of the movie, and the other guy who was real douchebag that we told you about saying, hey, let me tell you something. If I end up like one of those freaks down there, shoot me in the head. And she would oblige him. Really would oblige him before this movie would go out. But besides spoiling certain parts of this movie, folks, and seeing the fact that we don't know how to review movies along the lines of Siskel and Ebert or any of those other famous reviewers that you know of, we say this. If you want to watch a zombie movie featuring people who are action stars in other films in a world that's gone straight to hell, leaving all of them to go into a mall, almost like the original film that featured people in the original film, playing heroes in their own way, shape, or form, then I recommend you go out there and watch that flick. And according to the maestro, it comes on FX 4 days after New Year's. So yeah, go ahead and check it out. And with that said, folks, I think it's time for us to head back into this music, and when we return, we'll be back with more of the Indy Radio Arcade right after a word from our sponsors. So stay tuned.